Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. It's 10:32 because I don't want to hold everybody up because I know you all have very, very, very busy days today. Um, Before Sean gets started, because this is going to be more the Sean show than the Sean and George show, because Sean is the one that attended the seminar on the HOA and condo laws, and George did not. So henceforth, two things I want to mention though. One, just a reminder about turning in your earnest money deposits if they're coming to the company. Remember, it is very timely. The Maryland law says basically they have to be turned into us within 7 business days. Most brokers, including Remax, we usually state that we want it within 48 hours, even though I know the contract, sometimes you can indicate in there that to be turned in within 5 days and things of that nature. Just be careful with that because we have run into a couple instances of recent where it's gone beyond that point, and we're trying to track down the buyer to get the earnest money deposit, and it takes quite a bit to do that. So just wanted to remind you about that. And number two is, as Sean was just saying a few minutes ago, our next Tales from the Field will be on October 10th. And we're going to be reviewing all the updates that Maryland does every October on the forms and contracts, changes within documents, and there are some new documents that will be added. And with that, I want to turn this over to Ms. Sean Bassford. Go ahead, Sean.
Okay, good morning. And I don't know that we'll need the whole hour and a half for this because my version of what I'll present to you is going to be fairly quick. I did attend the MAR online webinar the other day to see what their take was on this. It was also reviewed in one of the forms changes that's going to happen this year. And then Barbara shared with me from the Coastal Association a form that I almost kind of like better. I think they outdid MAR with their form. So we'll talk to Alex about maybe incorporating that company-wide. So the crux of what to know is that any of you that practice in PG or Montgomery counties know that this rule was in effect for the past 2 years in Prince George's County, the past year in Montgomery, and now it's a statewide mandate that all condominium associations, residential, not commercial, all residential condominium associations and any HOA that has a cumulative value of greater than $10,000 for the common area elements must complete a reserve study. And parts of it felt worrisome to me, but I get the meaning behind it. And I think that is that some management companies, some associations have had little or no participation from owners over the years. And things have not always been tended to. And we know when we get a resale package that within that package, I know the highlights that I look at before I give it to a client who ultimately, let's remember this, it is their responsibility to review this. It's not our responsibility to review, digest it, interpret it, quite the contrary. So it's our message, or it's our job to get the message out to them that they need to be mindful of it and satisfy themselves. So the reserve studies are being done and now should be incorporated into the packages that are being put out as a resale package. And they should indicate when it was done, what the findings were, and what the projected capital improvements are. And then they have to do that I keep reading 5 years. My notes from MAR said 3, but everything else is saying 5. So I think I either wrote it down wrong or they misstated, but it's trivial. They have to complete these reserve studies to stay on top of capital improvements. So these condominiums and HOAs do not let things get into disrepair, basically. So where that comes in for our buyers and what they need to be watchful and mindful of, because if you think about it, I think it's not a bad thing that they're doing. What we have to caution our buyers to do is read the resale package. A lot of them get it, or I'll see like a buyer signs off that they received it within the seller documents on Bright when the package hasn't even been ordered. And then you get into this debate of when were they received, because they signed off for them when they submitted their offer. So it's important to make them aware of the law, the MAR has updated the consumer notice that we always include with our buyer agency. At the bottom, they put kind of a very insignificant little paragraph to remind the consumer, the buyer, that it's important for you to know about this and to read your resale package. Ron?
Quick question, because it seems real simple, but where does it indicate for any particular condo set of docs when their start date or the anniversary date of this 5-year term, right? Because it's a new rule. So when is it 5 years from now that they need to do a study, or do they all need to do a study out of the gate within a certain time frame and then every 5 years?
Great question. And I was talking and didn't go through that. October 1, 2023 is when they must have one done and completed by then. Now, there will probably be some who don't. We don't know what the repercussions will be, and it doesn't really matter to us, but that's what MAR said as well. But October 1, all condominiums and HOAs with common areas over 10,000 are mandated by this House bill to have their reserve study done. And then from there, 5 years forward. So great question. Whenever it was done, it should be noted in the resale package, and then 5 years from then it should be done. I don't know that we can compel this. I think one thing that I heard that sounded like a good idea in these early days of this happening is if the condominium and HOA associations would include, or if the owner will ask for them to include, the meeting minutes for the past 3 years of when the boards met, so we can see any conversations. I have one myself where it was a condominium in Prince George's, and they specifically did not note a horrific thing that was happening, which was the city of Laurel had issued a condemnation order. And 48 hours after my kid bought his condo, he got a notice to vacate. Luckily, they're getting their hands around it, and they're fixing and working with the fire marshal. But that's a different story. The resale package should disclose any ongoing lawsuits, when the reserve study was done, what the projection is for those improvements, separate and apart from, like, my eyes were always trained to look at the resale package, look at the budget. Do they have a surplus? What are they projecting to do? Roofs, stairwells, that kind of big projects. But now it should be more specific within the resale package. Again, it's good to know so that we're watching, but it's going to be important too, like the resale package sign-offs, because we have one going on. I've recently reread the language. It's specifically like in the condo resale, where the buyer acknowledges receipt of the documents. It's specifically in our existing documents, indemnifies the broker and the agent. But I got to tell you, that won't stop the person who gets an assessment and files a complaint with the real estate commission, and then we'll defend it. But it's just important to draw that consumer's mind to, don't just sign, and it always has been, don't just sign the resale certificate. Give it as much importance as you should. Now the difference is, in the past, a lot of people didn't care. They would just pay the monthly bill. They didn't attend the board meetings. Things went on, but now some of these places are having $75,000 assessments. It can be a monthly increase. It can be one big fat assessment. It can be one big fat assessment broken into 3 installments. And some people, if they weren't prepared for that, might not have the wherewithal to do it and to participate. And it's also important within the resale package to note, what's the delinquency rate? Like, if any of us have FHA or VA buyers buying in the condominiums, we have a little bit of a safety net there, because those lending types will watch that and not lend over a certain margin. And if there's a bigger than, what did I made a note here for myself? I think the 15% is what they caution people to watch against. A delinquency rate higher than 15% might be an area of concern. because if 15% of the people are not paying their bill and you now are going to have this big assessment, what's going to happen? So it's important for the consumer to be aware and digest the information. Us, not really. It's good knowledge to know, but we don't interpret it. It's up to them to get the package, read it, and make their best decision.
Quiet.
Chris, were you raising your hand or just?
Let me make another.
Unmute. I'm sorry, George. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I was going to make one more comment that it doesn't quite deal with what Sean's talking about, but it does deal with the resale package and the transmittal of documents. I can tell you sometimes from auditing some of your contracts, not many of them, but some of them, that document is being signed by the buyer and initialed off and signed by the seller before those documents are ever sent and received. So be careful about that. Another thing that and I'm sure many of you are already aware of that, there is a limitation that was put several years ago on what a management company can charge for the resale package. And one of the ways they're getting around that is, and I live in one just like this, that now there is a separate condo, an HOA, and a third, that they have 3 resale packages in some of these newer condos, so they can charge you a fee for each one.
And then the expedite fee, because they have legally up to, 21 days to give you the package.
Yes.
If you go under contract and you're going fast, like a lot of our market operates, the 21 days may not be adequate to get it. So many times you're paying that rush fee. So that's, I think, another way that they're trying to get capital.
Absolutely.
Sean.
Mm-hmm.
So, the language in our condo HOA forms, basically when you receive the package, you sign off that you received it. And then you have that time frame to cancel or whatever, get out of the contract. However, will they be changing some of that language just maybe to say that we received it and, that time frame they may review it, but they don't always understand it. And the reserve funds, this is new to some people. They may just go ahead with it. I mean, I guess I'm talking outside of the box here, but it just seems like it should be a separate document just to say we received it, and then go on with different language that addresses this new issue,
No. A great question, because it is a lot to digest. And I guess our biggest thing is just helping that buyer understand, when you sign that document, the clock really does start ticking. You need to read it. You can ask me questions if you have questions, or better yet, to go to the management company to ask them directly. But no, they're not changing the timeframes. The reason I like the document that Barbara shared with management last night from Coastal is that if they have at least made it a separate document to give it its own importance, I feel like that is fairer to the buyer. I feel like it's fairer to us as the licensees, because it makes us pause and like we are at least presenting that document rather than a sentence that got added to the consumer notice that many times people aren't reading the documents that they're signing. And so in that, I love the form that Coastal came up with better, because to me, that is like the only kind of pumping of the brakes that anybody in this discussion has done, as far as, it's just the buyers have to be careful and understand what they're getting into. And with these reserve studies too, it's just important for buyers to know and be sophisticated enough and handle their budget enough to know that, based on the condition of what they're buying today, hopefully getting this study done now and wrapping their arms around it, you'll figure out what's going to happen in the next 5 years. And then you can also just kind of look around you and see, has this place been kept up? Have they stayed on top of projects? What does the budget look like? To me, at this point, the budget and the reserve study have become way more important than if you can put a flagpole on your condominium porch anymore. So that's my opinion. So therefore, I like the addendum, and I'm going to ask Alex if we can just incorporate that into our documents separate from the consumer notice. Because yes, good question, Chris. No, the timeframes have not changed.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No?
You know, I would say that most often the agents I deal with pretty regularly, not everybody, but especially the newer ones, they don't even understand what's supposed to be in the condo docs. They don't read the condo docs. If you talk to them about parts of a condo doc, they don't understand it. I like to read, especially if it's the first time I've done a deal in that particular building. You know, I like to go through them and get up to speed on bylaws and things like that, like our dogs, our pets allowed. That should be an easy one to answer. But what's interesting, like I want to show you guys something real quick. Like this is this is a deal I'm doing right now. Like that's the, what, can you guys see that budget?
Yeah,
That's it. It's one page. Like
yeah.
it takes 10 seconds to look through that. And then the reserve account is $49,000 on a 20 unit project. Like this reserve study, I think is fantastic because you could burn through that $49,000 so fast. Like it's just really good. But the things that you're talking about, Sean, are like about the consumer, but I think their agents really got to, you know, we're in such a dot loop world where we're used to just like sending things and getting signatures and stuff like that. And it's amazing. I just got a listing recently from somebody that bought like 5 years ago with a young agent, and they're big. And I think they see me as like a fatherly figure because like I can explain the contract to them. They're like, this person couldn't explain anything, couldn't, you know, every negotiation they just rolled over and didn't really represent us, didn't understand the contract. I think that's like right now, especially in this market, how we all have to evolve to just getting better at what we do.
You are
Yeah,
so right, Ron. Yep, you are, as Alex would say, spot on. That is true. And we see it in the industry. You guys certainly do way more business than I do. It's alarming and sad that some people are not giving the importance to their practice to understand, for the love of Pete, you are representing the biggest purchase somebody will make. Do good. Act like it's you. Act like it's you buying this property.
Spend 10 minutes to read
Right.
the document so that
Right.
you can, you know, guide your client, right?
Right. Right. And for a point of reference, and you all may do this too, so it's not meaning I do everything right, but in my world, because I get to learn by things that I see happen with you, to you, for you, and incorporate it and share it for all of our betterment. That's really what this is about, is that when I am working with a client and we are doing things electronically through dot loop versus face to face, I do make a practice of always sending the documents first, taking off the ability to sign. And I specifically say to them in the dot loop message or in a text, because everything in my world is 6 months from now when the complaint comes in from the commission, I will say to them, I'm sending this specifically to you without the ability to sign. I do not want the system to guide you through this document. I want you to carefully read it, and then let's talk about how you feel about it, any questions, and then I'll resend it to you with the ability to sign. So even if they are kind of that fly by the seat of their pants kind of person, I've done my best to get them to stop and pay attention to the document if I can't be with them face to face. Just a thing to think about.
Yeah, and there's a lot of important documents in there, as you're mentioning, Ron. I mean, looking at when you put up that budget, it seemed pretty simple. A lot of the ones I've seen are a lot more detailed than that. But they got to pay attention to the bylaws, and sometimes they change. That's why it's so important. I've had people try to say, well, can't I just give them the one I have when I bought the house? No, you can't, because bylaws change. And a prime example of that, there was a case presented where someone there's a condo complexes, there are many of them in the Towson area, and somebody bought a condo there, an elderly lady with a dog. She bought the condo there. They gave her the previous, or the one the owner had. instead of giving her an updated one. And as it turned out, they had changed the bylaws that pets were not allowed at all. And that created quite a buzz.
Good point. Yeah, you can never accept those. And we all probably as buyer's agents have had listing agents try to just give that to us, and that's not okay.
But I do think it's important that they got to go through the covenants and restrictions, the bylaws, what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do, any changes to the property, what they're allowed to do, what they can't do. It's important to know that. I live in one, and this is the second time I've lived in a condo, and I can tell you there have been times that people have made changes, minor changes, that they're a ground level unit or something like that, and they've done something outside with their patio, and next thing you know, they're being told they can't do it. And they may have paid a contractor to put that in, because your contractors don't always know what the rules are. They hired somebody to come in and do something for them, and then they're not allowed to do that.
You guys want to go on a time machine? These are condo docs I just got for the Anchorage Tower. Everybody go back to 1995.
Yes.
Somebody's asking me about them. I was like, well, it's like 3 inches thick. You can come over and find that.
Yeah, I used to sell a lot of them over in the Woodland Village area, Ron, and they would give them to me in a box. They weren't in a nice booklet like that. They gave them to you in a box.
This is yesterday.
Did they bring it on a bicycle courier?
They should have, for dramatic effect.
Yeah, little satchel over the shoulder. So does this just make sense? It's really, it's just being good practitioners. This really does fall on the buyer consumer, but it's us as agents, like Ron said, being informed, knowing the basics, knowing at least, like George and Ron are both saying, look through it at least. So you have, if anything grabs your eye of concern, ultimately it is up to, just like the home inspection, ultimately, you may think it's horrible that the roof is caving in bedroom number 3, but the buyer might be a roofer and he might be okay with it. So it's their level of risk and what they're able to assume and deal with. And just making sure that they take a pause to make themselves informed. And then moving forward, we can't control what will happen 5 years in the next resale for the certification, but moving forward, this is going to be a thing that continues. And it is good on some level. It's going to increase, I think, accountability. I think that's the reason for this coming through. This early stage where people are, including the associations and management companies, unfamiliar with what's happening, that they even have to have the study done, because they assured us in this webinar that not everybody is yet compliant, and there will be some who aren't. So I think if we fast forward through this, the meaning of why they're doing it will become a good thing. It's just like most big changes that come about, being aware, being informed, and doing our best.
And I think one of the things that Ron points out too that's very important, when Ron looked at that budget, or the reserves were only $49,000. That's, to the average buyer, that may seem like something, but imagine if that condo complex has 8 buildings, and all of a sudden they got to replace every roof in that, on all 8 buildings. That 49,000 is going to be done on probably one half of one of the buildings. It's gone. So you got to make sure it looks normal to you. It looks like they have the funds to do the kind of things that may have to come about. Anybody else have any questions? No?
Well, that was pretty quick.
Yeah, I know. We knocked this out in actually about 35 minutes or 25 minutes. So we're doing good.
Yeah, enough said.
Okay, let's see. I'm reading some of this stuff here. There is a difference between acting as an attorney and reviewing any property contract which have restrictions like condos and HOAs. It's Jay asking a question. I'm not sure what you're asking there, Jay, but yeah, we're not attorneys. We're not attorneys. Keep that in mind. We can't interpret things like that. It's like when we present contracts, a lot of times we review it, but don't act like you're an attorney. And the same way when you're writing addendums, I've seen people write addendums that they try to write like an attorney. Be careful, because we're not supposed to write any addendums, but I know that many of us do. But it's, be careful what you do. Let's see, I have another one here. Another reason agents need to pay attention is the standard of agent responsibility and be judged on what they know or should have known. That's a very good point. That is a good point. Because there are certain things we as professionals are required to have knowledge of, and because of our experience and our education, we are required to know and be able to ask our buyers questions, and so that we know that what has to be explained to others and so forth, and what they know that they have a responsibility of doing. I don't see any others here that work. Nope, don't see any other questions here in the chat box. Is anybody noticing any more slowdown in the market now that we're starting to hit after everybody's gone back to school and the fall of the year is approaching us? The weather's getting a little cooler and here it looks even better. No?
I think there's maybe a smidge more inventory. I mean, you guys work the field much better or bigger than I do. Although I will say that if Sean Bassford writes an offer, yes, a property that's been on the market for 84 days will now get multiple offers. You're welcome. And
I think we all run into that a little bit. Okay. I know this has been a short one, but I do want to thank everybody for coming on. Again, don't miss the October 10th. That's going to be another big one. And we'll be going over all the updates and all the documents from Maryland. The thing with Maryland is Maryland updates documents every October without fail. There's something they do. If you have a license in Pennsylvania or Delaware, that seldom happens. Their documents, there's a lot fewer documents in both of those states. They have very few addendums. Everything's built into the contract. Sometimes if you read through the Pennsylvania contract, it's a little hard to understand. I know Amy Saxon, there's a couple others out there that deal a lot with Pennsylvania. It's everything's built right into the contract of sale. Same way with Delaware. There might be a couple addendums here and there, but not many. Maryland is a very litigious state. We have the highest concentration of attorneys in the country, most of them down around the DC area, but that's why our contracts are what they are. Not that I'm blaming any attorneys out there. Okay.
Okay.
That everybody have a great day. Thank you for attending and look forward to seeing you guys in the future.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.